this stuff. So I'd be interested in, from others on the panel, what are the kind of barriers and difficulties that you've found in the process, or is it all very easy? And I just don't know how to do it.
Yeah, it is. It's easy, and no, it hasn't been easy for us. My perspective on this has been, well, we do have other. Our approach to most of our clients' asset allocation is to diversify across all asset classes. We talk about the difference between having assets that do well in growth environments, inflation environments, and deflation environments. And in the inflation piece, things like energy, commodities, real assets, timber, there's lots of things in there that we think are important to hedge against inflation. So we spend a lot of time in the energy space, and we have commodity exposure. Not every of our clients can choose that. We have ways of electing around those things. But so we feel like we're familiar with investing in general. We've been doing this for a long time, and staff have been doing this. But then to sort of add a layer to it to say, they want this not just to be, we can, if we see a fund we like, it's the people, their process, what we think the outlook is for the industry, and we go through our process, and we like that investment, we move forward. But then to add this other thing to say, it's not just the return. We want to see if it has an impact on it as well. And how do we define impact? And what happens if you invest in a fund that has a great return, and someone says, well, how can you had a positive impact when you made 40% on that investment? Or think of a housing fund. Or,
could you tell me what that one is?
Yeah, well, not that that's. But that would be a question we'd have is, could you actually have too good a return when your focus is impact or being a socially good investor? So we're trying to find that balance between return and impact. Like, I can tell a charitable donation, that's easy, and I can tell something that we're going for return on this. But we've been approached some groups that would say they call themselves impact investors, and one of the companies was basically the impact was that they were creating jobs in the Oakland area. And that's great. That's an impact. If that was me that got that job, it would be an impact for me. But that's sort of not how we're defining it. So we're trying to have very good definitions of what matters. On the climate side, I guess it would be fairly straightforward if it was solar, wind, renewable energies. If it sort of fit that definition, then that might be a little bit easier. But then it's going out and finding the opportunities that we think meet the bar that we set on our due diligence screens and tests. So we think on the private side, if we could find 3 to 4 opportunities a year, we'd be doing very well. We love for it to be as much in the climate side, on the environment side as possible, but we didn't want to box ourselves into a particular industry because you don't know. There could be a year where there'd be 3 great funds, or it might be 0. We didn't want to just push money into the space. So it's a slow process because there's a lot out there. It just takes a lot of time to understand what the story is behind there, what's the motivation behind it. Does it matter to us, and is it impactful enough? Does ever our clients feel that this meets an impact definition? We have an advisory committee that will meet as we have investments come through. And I imagine we will have opportunities where we think it's a great impact, and some might say, no, this doesn't meet impact, and what do you do there? So I think it's going to be hard, but it's worth the effort.
Jessica and Richard, what do you have reaction to that?
There you go.
Stop fighting over the mic.
Sharing the mic here together in stereo. Now, I was thinking about challenges, and a lot of the discussion at that part of the table has to do with the private markets. And we have a self-imposed issue, I would say, at Friends Fiduciary. All of our funds are unitized. They're commingled funds that are unitized, and we have a requirement for liquidity, which sort of rules out the private market. So when it comes to implementing strategies, we are a little bit more limited, I think, within our commingled funds. Now, we could always carve out a piece off to the side, and we've had discussions about that, and they will continue to be conversations we have. So it's a self-imposed, like I said. Other challenges, of course, is finding managers who will implement your social guidelines alongside of other guidelines that you're bringing to the table. I think that's all I had to say so desperately. I'll give it back to you.
I suppose when I think about some of the challenges, I mean, other people would say some of the challenges are consultants. So then as a consultant, what am I trying to do to alleviate that? Do you have another comment on that? And so, we really don't want to be seen as barriers to this area. It's something that I will say we're a consulting firm that has over 200, field consultants working with clients, and not all of them are as familiar in these areas. And so, it can definitely be sometimes you're talking to your particular consultant that might not be as well versed. And so, as somebody said earlier, make sure that you're really pushing on your consultant. And a lot of us, you heard from Mercer earlier, Mercer and I and Cambridge have plenty of other competitors too who are in this space. So, you really shouldn't necessarily just take no as an answer in that area. But the way that we think about talking to clients when they come to us, and it seems daunting, it seems like there's an area where there's a lot of unknowns. And also, while we talk about the number of opportunities, I could talk more about it. We've already heard from panelists earlier who have talked about the number of opportunities. When push comes to shove, there are still not a lot of funds that I think that people feel very comfortable investing in yet. We need more funds, and I think that that's developing. But so I've made this sound hard and difficult, and I don't mean to at all. And so what we would advise is really a couple things, and I think that this is relevant to all of mission investing. And then in this case, when you're overlaying a particular theme on it of environmental investing, that is, be very clear about what your mission objectives are. So in the case of this environmental arena, are we talking about approaching this from a risk basis, and you want to lower your exposure to carbon assets? Or is your objective really that you've decided to more proactively invest in solutions companies? Those aren't mutually exclusive, but I think that you'll find the opportunity set to be a little bit different between those two things. Articulating that to your consultant who's helping you find investments, I think, is an important part of a first conversation around that. And we would also argue that in this area in particular, to kind of take a bottom-up approach to these things. There's a vast universe, but take a look at what really feels like it might be a couple first investments that you can make in your portfolio. You can set a target to it, and we heard earlier about Sydney deciding to set a target towards actually the specific reduction of their carbon exposure. That could be helpful, but I don't think it's necessary. I think if you just start small and incremental and add, I think that taking a measured pace is a good way to go. And also, a sort of on a related note, of course, being ensuring or emphasizing quality over quantity. And then I think the other thing that's helpful in this area is that while these things sound daunting, there certainly are niche strategies that don't look like your other investments. But we try to talk about anything mission, social, environmentally oriented in the traditional sort of risk and return framework that clients are familiar with. So, if you have worked with your consultants, if your investment committee has an asset allocation structure in place that they are familiar with, that they like, you don't need to necessarily revisit that just because you'd like to add some environmental, or proactive solutions. As we've heard, these opportunities exist across asset classes. Some of them are using very traditional benchmarks, and there's some nuances, of course, and maybe some things are more cyclical or a little bit more sector specific, but there's generally place for these things within your existing asset allocation structures. So just some sort of tenets to our philosophy around these things that we share with clients.